In Africa, in the past, according to many traditions, especially like in the Bantu, I think some of the Kushite communities, our elders realized that people are different. The law of causality states that all things act in accordance with their nature. And they realized that men and women are different. Yeah? So it was during the initiation that the values, the ethics would be transmitted. The men would be taken aside by the older men and the values were transmitted, and the girls would be taken by the older women and the values were transmitted, because these guys understood men and women are different. The problem with a lot of the Western values is something we call like blank slate equalism. They believe that we are all blank slates. That's why you have a lot of this nonsense like, gender fluidity and things like that, or gender, all that. There's a lot of things that don't make sense. One day, when we have time, we'll go through them. But men and women are different. We have different natures. Yeah? And as such, when we are presented by different things, we'll respond differently. And depending on what we value as men or as women, we will behave or conduct ourselves differently. We will act differently. And this is where things get a bit tricky now. And this is where I think I get to the opportunity to rub people the wrong way. But please bear with me, because it's very important that you understand what has been happening and what is happening now, because there's a lot that is about to change. And many people might not see it, but there's a lot that is about to change. So, there's a gentleman by the name of Karl Marx. Karl Marx, the one who said that religion is the opium of the masses. Yeah. Karl Marx came up with his classical theory called Marxism, classical Marxism. And in Marxism, they say that, there's the working class, which he called the proletariat. The word is so difficult. Keep stressing me. Proletariat. And then there's the owners of capital, whom he called the bourgeoisie. And these two classes are always conflicting. Yeah? Moja inataka kukalia ingine ina fight back. And then there was through unions and all that. And they had predicted that at some point there'll be a revolution and kick out capitalism and, communism or whatever will take hold. But that never happened. And they didn't have an explanation. Why didn't this happen? And they wondered and said, it's because the culture didn't change. So, starting with the Frankfurt School, a group of scholars came down and came up with something which they called, or which we call today, cultural Marxism. And cultural Marxism basically says that, there's one class that is oppressed and there's one class that oppresses the other. Yeah? And those were the roots of a movement called feminism. Yeah? And feminism got its identity from there. We are oppressed, we need our rights. And the women at that time, because remember, there has been a social contract between the genders. Men did their thing, women did their thing. And it had worked for all these years. But from around the 60s, the women decided, this thing is not working for us. We want to change our values, our ethics. Yeah, we want to be able to vote. And knowing that women are always they always outnumber men. So the minute they got the right to vote, men, you lost it there. Yeah, the rest is just history, the slow decline. So the universal suffrage thing, the women fought for their right to vote. And then feminism went ahead, and I think after that, there was the invention of the pill, and there came the sexual liberation. We are sexually repressed, all that. And then, the women just wakajiwachilia sasa. Then after that, it came, I think the third thing that has shaped the way we, I think, is social media. These are like the three main things. But there's been many things in between. Yeah, universal suffrage, the start of feminism with the universal suffrage, the birth control pill, and social media. And that is what has defined who the modern woman is. So the modern woman is not like the traditional woman. Yeah. Feminism has infiltrated, and they're feminists, even they're feminist men. Yeah, they're there. So, yeah, it might just sound like it's easy, but remember what I said earlier. Ethics. The women redefined their ethics. They redefined their ethics. And after they redefined their ethics, the men were still holding on to the same ethics. Yeah? And the women were saying that the men are oppressing them. So now you have a gender war, which is there till now. Now in Kenya and many African nations, this happened around, I think in the 80s, with the Beijing conference and all that. Yeah. So the women goes there and they come. And our mothers, they picked that thing and they came and told our sisters, don't depend on a man. Work so that you're strong, independent, and you don't need a man. Because if you depend on a man, they will abuse you, they will mistreat you, all those things. Yeah? They broke their trust to the point where today the women don't trust the men. So the trust was broken. Women redefined their values, and they've been implementing them ever since till today. And all these years, the story has been told from one side, from the women's side. The men have been silent, been just quiet, passive. Our fathers were permissive. They allowed it to happen. They did not challenge it. Maybe they lacked the tools to challenge it, but they did not challenge it. Yeah. So we grow up and we have now, women have now come to the politics. I told you what happens in the ethics. Once the ethics change, that's where the transformation happens. Then at the politics side, how do we organize our society? That is now social engineering. Yeah. So they've been engineering society to suit their new values and all that. That is what has been happening. So it came to a point where now we have a gynocentric social order. At least that's what it's called, a gynocentric social order. It favors the woman. And the men, our fathers, I don't know, they were just silent. So now, my generation, Generation X, at least the late Generation X and all that, the early Generation X, I think they were collateral. They're also feminists and all that. They're thinking the same way. But our generation now, we have realized there's a problem. Things are not working. And I'm not saying that we should now go back to the tradition. No. The cat is out of the bag. Pandora's box has been opened. Once you open Pandora's box, you can't put back the chaos inside. It has been opened. So we just have to move forward through this. So men at some point, they sat down and they're like, hey, this thing is not working for us. The way society is, it's not working for us, because now you have the patriarchy, which includes every man. Men have all been labeled evil. It's even worse for like white men. We have been labeled as oppressors, and you hear all those names being thrown around. You're a chauvinist, misogynistic, all those things. And the mainstream media today is dominated by women. They just push their content out there. So they've been shaping, which is good for them. Yeah. But we all have to live in this world. So even men have their own, we also have our own lives. So men sat down and they're like, this thing is not working for us. Starting in the 80s. Actually, not in the 80s. Starting in the late 90s, early 2000. And we had a group of men who are called the men's rights activists. And these guys, they sat down and they were like, let's try and advocate for men's rights. And they really did try advocating for men's rights, but nothing happened. In fact, they were just being laughed at. They're being told, you guys are men. Why are you just sitting there and whining and complaining? Yeah, you're men. Do something. And the men's right activism thing never worked. In fact, I mean, there were many people who championed for it, even women who championed for the men's right activism. But activism is just that. It's just activism. It didn't work. So the men sat down and they started interrogating the things, because men are good problem solvers. So they started trying to understand, what is this that is happening? Why are things happening the way they are? Then you also had another group of pickup artists who said, look, we are going to hack the system. Yeah. So we'll just try and get with the ladies. Yani. And they would go and they would teach other men, and they would go in the field and try and get numbers and all that and hook up with chicks. A lot of things. But after some time, that died out, because after some point, these same men who are doing these things, they grew up and they realized life is not about women. It's not about going to get women and your notch count. They realize there's more to life than women. So they broadened that, and that has now evolved to what we call the red pill philosophy. And the red pill philosophy comes from the Matrix. If you watch the Matrix, when Morpheus was trying to unplug Neo from the Matrix, and he gave him the two choices, the red pill or the blue pill. Take the blue pill, you go back to sleep, you wake up, your life is just as back to normal. If you take the red pill, you'll wake up, disconnect from the Matrix, and I'll show you how deep the rabbit hole goes. And basically, that's where it is. So men started saying, look, there are so many lies that we've been sold, so many lies, that it is important for you as a man to start disconnecting from those lies, to understand the truth of society, just between dynamics between men and women and all that. And men, the information, men have collected that information today. It is there. If you are a man, you want to update your masculine ethics, the information is there. Now, once the men come across this information, some of them are able to unplug, others are unable to unplug. Some men just choose the blue pill. Yeah, I think even in the Matrix they said it is impossible to unplug somebody beyond a certain age. So for a lot of the late generation Xers, the baby boomers, they can't unplug from it. They can't. They don't understand. Yeah, but the younger generations, they are understanding this stuff and they are picking it up. They are picking up this stuff. So So what is happening now? So men are choosing. Once they get the information, you can't tell a man how to live their life. So people are responding differently. So you have men who, we call it the MGTOW movement, or men going their own way. So men are choosing to go their own way, do their own things, because society teaches us two different things. Boys are told, do the right thing, do the right thing. But the girls are being told, you do what's right for you. Yeah. So the boys are like, that's like a double standard. So the guys are like, now, men are saying, even me, I'll do what's right for me. I'll do what's right for me. And that is where we are today. So men are now beginning to redefine their ethics, redefine what is important to them. Yeah. And nothing is out of bounds, even marriage. A lot of men are going their own way. They're choosing not to get married because men have crunched the numbers and it doesn't make sense, especially in the West. It does not make sense. Yeah? It doesn't make sense. About 50-60% of the marriages end in divorce. 8 out of 10 marriages, the divorce is initiated by women. Yeah? And when you're taken through the family court, it is brutal. We call it divorce rape. You are raped there by the system. You are left with nothing, in a very bad state. So men are not blind. They can see the injustices in the system and they are beginning to respond. Now, this is at the ethics level. Now, when this thing now starts moving into the politics level, which it has started moving, you're going to see a lot of change, a lot of pushback, a lot of challenging some of the narratives and agendas being pushed. And the gender war now is going to become a proper war.